Hey everyone, Lyndon here, and today we're doing the second episode of The Joy of Architecture. Now, it's been over a year since the first episode, and I don't know why that is, probably because I didn't really have many ideas for videos and that sort of escaped my head, even though I still have been improving my sketching skills and things like that, as you'll probably see on at clg.architecture. As most of my followers will know me, they'll know about our Instagram page. Anyway, that aside, today I'm designing my dream house in Minecraft, and the way that I'm showing this is through screenshots and through my sketches as well. So starting with the exterior, we can see that it's got quite a Mediterranean aesthetic, so I'm using plenty of wood, using plenty of whitewash as well as brick. Now, the reason for my positioning of the patio itself and the main sort of porch area being one floor up is because I wanted to make a distinct sort of divide between the garage and the main sort of living area of the house itself. Now I can see this on my very first sketch of the house itself. So what I've sort of done is shown that I want the garage and the living area to be separate and the garage to be slightly extruded. So this will have some sort of functional appeal, so it'll create a sort of small area before you enter the house itself. And it'll also create a distinction between the garage and the house itself. While not being completely obvious, it will be there. Now, let's move on to the interior itself. Now, in the interior itself, you'll notice that there are a lot of references to the Bauhaus movement of design, which is a very minimalist movement that places function before form. And I'm a big follower of this movement, and I very much subscribe to its ideas of not having excess and a design being functional before it looks good. Now, I believe that a lot of form does come from function, because something can look nice but be completely unusable and it's therefore useless. And that sort of, well, you can look at it and think, well, this looks great, but what use is it to me? I believe Bauhaus strikes the perfect balance between aesthetics and function, and I believe that through its simplicity it becomes beautiful. And another sort of facet of Bauhaus that I believe has made it into the design of this house is the interior. So the plan itself is very open. I have taken care to make a lot of archways and to leave everything very open, but to an extent that still prevents sounds that are maybe obtrusive to life from one room coming into the next. So, for example, sounds of clattering from the kitchen may not reach the living room because there are two walls between it, yet there are still arches. Not the other sounds. Get your heads out the gutter. Now, moving into the living room itself, it's immediately obvious where there's examples of modernist design. So you might be able to see, not as clearly in this photo, but definitely in the next one, a painting by Mondrian of the Die Style movement. There is also a plant in the corner with an anvil as the base. Now, I know what you're going to be thinking, Minecraft is angular anyway, and yes, it is, but I genuinely like angular sort of design and sort of sharp lines, so Minecraft was really perfect to do this house in. So anyway, another example of Bauhaus and sort of that philosophy is the use of technology. So we can see quite a considerably large television in the distance with, as the observant eye might have been able to see, Formula 1. While I have to admit I'm a fan of it, I did want to display technology in this house, in my dream house. I'm a big fan of technology, and I feel like Bauhaus is the perfect example of celebrating technology and celebrating the new technologies that came of the Industrial Revolution. But I feel like there are also small elements of Art Deco that sort of contradict Bauhaus that have leaked in. So you might be able to see a prismarine, or as it would be in real life, malachite table. Now, I do like malachite, I have to admit. I saw a malachite table in the Winter Palace in Russia, and they're expensive, sure, but I would love to have one. So, while I have to admit this house is going to be very much sort of representative of Bauhaus, there will be elements of Art Deco and there will be elements of other movements of design. they all just influence each other, and I think that's what's so beautiful about design. Different design movements lend themselves very nicely to each other. I mean, you can even see elements of the arts and crafts movement in Bauhaus through sort of making design for the masses even. But that's not something I'm really going to discuss in depth on this video. This is a tour of my dream house in Minecraft after all, not a design lesson. So in the kitchen itself we can again see many examples of Bauhaus. So I mean, firstly the example is more contemporary design than Bauhaus design, contemporary being sort of 2020s, whereas Bauhaus is more early 20th century. But I digress. These are through the granite worktops, and the reason I have these in the house is just because I like them. Just because I like that sort of colour and the way it lends itself nicely to the brick, which is definitely visible. About sort of facets of Bauhaus design itself is through the function. So we can see that the place is very sort of open plan. There's a glass sort of sliding door which leads into the dining area itself, and that arch as we saw before that leads directly into it, making it very open plan and requiring not much work or interaction at all. You could probably navigate it if you knew it well blind. Through the sort of example of efficiency itself, I feel like this kitchen, I've considered efficiency a lot in this kitchen. So you'll be able to see a quick drawing I've done of the kitchen triangle. Now this is something that architects, from what I've observed, use a lot. So you want to be able to draw a triangle between the fridge, the sink and the oven. So if this triangle sort of cuts through anything, so say counters or obstacles, then it's not very efficient. But if they're close together, if they're within easy reach, then it is more efficient. And something else we can see on this schematic is the path of someone trying to pass through the kitchen itself will not interfere with someone using the kitchen actively to cook, because the cooking area, while very open, is sort of sectioned off slightly by the kitchen triangle itself. So it's easy enough for someone to pass through the kitchen while it's in use, and the space can sort of breathe, if that makes any sense. As for the dining area itself, there's not really too much to comment on. It's got easy access to the terrace itself, and with the terrace itself, you might have seen on previous plans that the bottom floor is L-shaped, yet the top floor is a rectangle, and I wanted quite a big terrace because I wanted guests to be able to really stand outside and enjoy a nice large space in order to relax outside if it's a nice day. And also because of the eye line itself, if guests are in the garden itself, I've made the hedges quite tall, so that's for privacy reasons as well as for security and for aesthetics. The problem with this is that guests won't really be able to see into the sea and may feel a little entrapped, whereas if they're on the terrace, they will have the security of the perimeter hedge itself, as well as the ability to look into the ocean itself. So I believe that really lends itself nicely to the functional sort of area of Bauhaus. So I sort of feel like the function of the house through its shape and through the arrangement of rooms allows for maximum enjoyment for guests as well. So, I mean, that's really it, to be honest. I just wanted a terrace and it sort of turned out that way. I suppose a lot of this house is just fake it till you make it, but that's the dining room. Bon appetit. Oh, and on top of that, the dining room is also quite simple to get to, so you can get to it through one of the arches as you enter if you go straight ahead, and also through the glass door, which you might be able to see a lot more clearly than that arch which you can barely see. Now let's move on to going through the arch itself, which is directly ahead. So in terms of this area, this is really on the fringe of where guests will sort of go during their time at the house. So this is sort of a mixture between an area that will be used predominantly by tenants and predominantly by guests. There is a small seating area with a small music setup if guests wish to relax somewhere else in the living room with a nice view of the ocean through these windows. But it also has a small bathroom, so this just allows the residents to relieve themselves if they require, without having to really pass through the bedrooms on the bottom floor and sort of go deep within the house where mainly tenants will be. So this sort of allows for maximum efficiency, and when I say efficiency I mean in quality of life. So sort of tenants themselves won't really need to worry about guests being a little bit too invasive by sort of going into bedrooms when they're going to the bathroom itself. So instead they just have a bathroom on the top floor, which is close by, easy to get to and easy to sort of use. The only real regret that I have, that I can see when I look at the plans now I've sort of completed the house, is that the two bathrooms are not very close to each other in terms of on an XY sort of scale. In terms of height, they're only sort of one floor above each other. But the thing is, this doesn't make it very efficient in terms of plumbing. The pipes will have to go a long way, there'll need to be a lot of lintels, and this sort of increases the risk of leaks happening, which will damage the structural integrity. That's one of the big regrets I have about the design of this house, but I can't really see a way of changing it, to be quite honest. If I did it again, I probably would arrange it differently, but this is the here and now. I didn't do it, and that's one regret I have about the house. Other than that, perfectly fine. Let's head downstairs, which you will be able to see there is a big sort of 2-story length window. This really lets the light into this area, so in the morning when tenants themselves are emerging from their bedrooms, they'll have this huge sort of amount of light coming into the building, and it'll natural light, and a large amount thereof, really sort of seems to help, and in my opinion the more light the better. I mean, of course, too much natural light and too much of a union with nature isn't great, but in moderation and in sort of concentrated spots like these stairs, it really goes a long way. Now we're at the bottom of the stairs themselves, we can sort of see that there are two ways that people can go. So they can either come down the stairs, so coming down the stairs you can turn either immediately to your left, or you can come back on yourself and go down the corridor towards the bedrooms. We'll go into the area with the doors first and foremost, which is down the stairs and to the left. So before I go into the sort of rest of the room itself, I would like to show another plan. So where the colour is green, this is an area where there's a bit more self-expression and it's a little more informal, whereas areas highlighted red are a little more design based and a little more sort of where you want to show formal design, where you want to have guests to sort of look at design elements of design and sort of less self-expression. Because when you have guests over, it's less of a, oh look at me, look at my personality, it's more of a greetings, let's enjoy each other's company. At least that's in my very sort of different and distorted opinion. Anyway, that aside, let's look at the rest of the room. We can see that it's considerably more informal and sort of more of an area to relax and sort of enjoy one's own company. So that was sort of my intention for this room, to make it a little bit of a more fun and laid back area than the living room itself. Sort of somewhere to retreat to, say, to distress. Now, with the corridor to the bedroom itself, there's not really a lot of design to speak of. It's simply a very sectioned off area from the rest of the house, so it separates areas of sleeping from areas of living. So we'll be able to observe one more Mondrian painting on the wall with the corridor that sort of leads to the bedrooms themselves. This is definitely a bit more of a more formal and design oriented choice, simply because guests might lose their way and go a bit further down, so you'll still want that painting to sort of look at and sort of admire essentially, and it's also for the tenant's own enjoyment. I mean, I definitely like that painting a lot. So let's move on to the rooms themselves. They're massively more a sort of centre of self-expression. So I have multiple bedrooms, some of them might be used by guests, some of them by tenants, and I've sort of explored different designs because I wanted multiple bedrooms, So I've sort of just explored different sort of arrangements and designs according to the plan. So I've gone for 3 bedrooms in total, none of them particularly being the master bedroom, none of them particularly being smaller or larger than the others. Moving on to the sort of tenant's bathroom itself, we can definitely see that it's a lot more luxurious. There's sort of a small partition that separates the sort of toilet itself from someone just entering the room, so it prevents any sort of nasty surprises. And there's also, unlike the smaller and more guest-oriented bathroom, a bath and shower. So this is more so for the tenants to use. And finally, we move on to the exterior itself. There's not really a lot to say in terms of design choices for this sort of area, so I'm just gonna let the slides play, to be honest. So I'm gonna sort of do the outro right about here, so thank you all very much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed my sort of walkthrough of my design choices, of why I've placed things in certain places, why I've made certain choices, why I've designed it the way I have. So I hope you've enjoyed sitting through that, and I hope I haven't put too many of you to sleep, so if I have, wake up. Alright, see you guys in the next video. See ya!